Welcome, everybody. Call this meeting to order at 5:30. The regular select board meeting for Wednesday, November 18th. And we have our newly appointed new select board member with us, also Barra McNeil. Welcome. And so I think we need to probably officially adopt me as chair, David as vice chair. I can't remember whether we even did that already, Karen. Did we? Do you know? But we could do it again if we need to. So, for positions on the board, David, if you wanted to make a motion to appoint for me to be the chair, you to be the vice chair, and Barrett to be the clerk.
I'll make a motion to make Josh the chair, myself the vice chair, and Barrett the clerk.
And I will.
Can I second?
Yeah.
Can I second?
So it's been moved and seconded. Barra, are you pretty familiar with Robert's rules and sort of how these things tend to go?
Yeah.
Okay. So essentially, I mean, we try and follow Robert's rules as sort of reasonably accurately as we can. It doesn't always work out in quite the sequence that we think, but how it should work ideally is whenever we're going to discuss a topic, or at least once we know we're going to probably vote on a topic, ideally it's moved and seconded, which puts it open for discussion. So it's been moved and seconded to appoint me as chair, David as vice chair, and Barra as clerk of the board. And this will be through town meeting day of 2021. So that's open for discussion if there's any discussion about that. I see one thing in the chat, but it's not coming up for me, Karen. Is that? Let's see.
I don't see anything.
Yeah, so Alyssa's asking whether we opened the meeting. We did open the meeting. Yes, I think I did.
After recording?
Yes, after it was recorded. It was calling the meeting to order. Maybe I didn't officially do that. That was at 5:30. It's now 5:33. So it's been moved and seconded, and if there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. And
Aye.
On camera, Barra, it's also helpful just if you raise your hand, then everybody can see it or hear it, and that makes it easier. So, all right, and then any adjustments to the agenda, Karen?
None.
Okay. Approval of minutes. So we have the minutes of November 4th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of November 4th, 2020.
And I will second that motion. Barra, have you had a chance to see those, or you weren't?
I saw the minutes, but I didn't go to the meeting, so I'm going to abstain.
Recuse anyway. Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of November 4th. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Good. Thank you.
Should I officially state that I'm abstaining?
And that, yes.
I'm abstaining.
Yeah, because you were not present. All right. And then next would be warrants to the treasurer.
So I'll make a motion to approve and execute the warrants on completion of review.
Barry, you want to second that?
I second the motion.
Good. It's been moved and seconded to approve the warrants to the treasurer as presented and upon completion of review. So Karen, if you want to go ahead and go, well, we can go ahead and vote on it, and that will be contingent upon review. So if there's no further discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All
right. Karen, you want to run through them?
I will. Payroll warrant dated November 20th in the amount of $16,060.55. It's a normal payroll.
I don't have any questions about that one.
I see some new names on that. Are those guys for the fire department? Tom?
Do you want to list the names, David?
Mine says, wait a minute, mine says 10,823. Do I have the wrong warrants?
No, you got to look underneath. So see that paragraph?
The really small number.
I love you. These aren't strong enough.
You can add those two. Well, if we add those, will that equal 16?
It does. So what the warrant's doing is, so some people get a check and the rest are electronic deposits.
Okay.
So that's the 10,000 you're seeing,
Still there.
David.
Yep.
It's okay. It's a good question.
Barra, you need to just keep in mind, David's a little green, so he misses things like that from time to time, but he'll
You're
catch up.
mean.
But no, it's fine. I'm used to his type of friendship.
And when I'm on an iPad, so I'm unable to view things and be on camera at the same time. So when I disappear, it's not because I'm actually gone. It's just because I'm looking at things on paper at the same time. So.
And he's right. I do miss things, but you'll notice I didn't miss the difference in numbers.
Exactly. That was
Which
good.
is good. It's very important to pick up on that. All right, so we're good on that one, and then you have accounts payable.
Well, can I just ask Josh, because David brought up originally, the reason he brought this up was because there were some new names. Is that something you wanted to follow through on, David?
Yeah, Karen, it looked like a couple people I didn't recognize. Camden White?
He's
a fireman?
Yep, fire department.
Who else?
You'll see Julian Lavoy on there. He's our new treasurer, and he's settling right in, doing a really good job so far.
And Julia Vaughn Ranson, she's with the library.
She is with the library, yeah. She took Deb Stetson's place.
Got it. Okay. All right, good. Thanks. Yep.
You're welcome. Moving on, we have accounts payable for November 7th, 2020 through 11/20/2020 in the amount of $72,654.90. And Barrett, anytime if you see something on here and you want to question it, I have all the invoices. So normally, if we were in person, this warrant and the invoices would be on the table for review.
Okay. I didn't have a lot of time to look this over between when it was sent to me and the meeting, but I did just skim really quickly. And so probably just next time I might ask for more specifics so I can become more familiar with it. But right now I'm fine.
Yep. Don't worry, next warrant may have the school payment on there, and that one will be very noticeable. So.
Yeah, I bet it will.
Aquatech, Karen, what's that? Is that related to the treatment plant? I don't remember that.
That's for testing.
Oh, okay.
So this just brings up a question for me related to COVID. Are they testing for COVID by chance? Is that one of the things that you're doing? Because in Burlington, they were testing for the virus in the wastewater treatment. No? Okay.
Yeah, no, this is not for that. But it is certain testing that has to happen. And
Okay.
it's state mandated.
Okay.
And all facilities have to have certain testing done at certain times during the year.
Okay.
And I don't believe they're doing that in smaller municipalities. I know that private organizations, colleges, et cetera, are tending to do some of that as well. But I'm not aware that, Tom, do you know whether people are doing that in smaller municipalities, testing the wastewater for COVID?
No, typically not. The only smaller one, if you will, is up north, and that's in Middlebury.
Which is not, that's probably because of the college. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. But no, the smaller municipalities that have wastewater systems aren't testing.
I think we talked about it that one point. I don't know whether Simon's even, we contract Barrow with a wastewater treatment organization. They do both run our sewage treatment plant, and they run our water supply, called Simon's Operating System, and we do an annual contract with them. And I don't know whether that's something they're able to offer. I'm not sure. Also, the idea with that is generally to catch things early. It might be something that would make sense for somewhere like Landmark for us to do, but for us as a municipality, I'm not sure there would be any value in it.
And I'm not saying that we should. I was just curious if that was part of what was happening, but it makes sense that a small municipality wouldn't do that.
Yeah. All right. I think that's all I have on there. David, you got any other questions on that?
Radio North Group, you tell me what that is?
Those are radios and mics for fire department personnel.
You got new personnel?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
excellent.
we have a few, and then one of those was actually where we cycle our radios. So we had one old one still left that was due to be replaced. So we finally did that.
Cool. Well, it's good. You got new people. Excellent.
And then Loretta Central refunds. That's a tax refund. Is Loretta Central, is that related to National Grid? What is that, Karen? Do you know?
No, it's a mortgage company.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
So the taxes were paid, probably the homestead exemption came in late.
Right. Yeah.
The mortgage company paid, so we had to pay them back.
Yeah. Sounds good. All right. All right. So we're all good on warrants. Did we have another? There was a third item on that. But that wasn't another warrant. That was the minutes. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So now we're open for public comment on items not on the agenda. If anybody would like to make a comment, they are welcome to. Again, I'm on an iPad, so I don't have everybody who's on camera on my screen at the same time. So if you could signify that you'd like to make a comment by putting something in the chat, that is one way to do it. You can also let Alyssa Harlow know, or you can just speak up. But I'm not seeing anybody anxiously stepping up. So sounds like we probably have no comments on public comment on items not on the agenda. So we'll move on to select board items. And first is errors and omissions. And I've got Geordie and Doug's names on here. I see you, Geordie. Is Doug with us as well?
Doug is not here.
Doug's not, okay. But that's fine. You can go ahead. Yeah, Karen?
I want to share the screen because I need to practice. Because we're going to be getting into the budget, and I think it's important that when we're talking about certain things that people can see what we're talking about.
Sounds good.
So, this is new, so everybody has to be patient, including myself. So Geordie, I'm going to pull up your document.
Okay.
Nice.
You like that, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Karen's living room.
Nice.
No,
It's not really. Sorry.
no, it's, I
Yeah.
wish. Absolutely not. All
You
right,
had
so
it.
can everyone see the document?
Karen, and then it went, and then it disappeared. Or for me anyway, it disappeared.
I don't have
Okay,
You had it for a second.
hold on.
It's actually the fireplace at the farm table down in Bernardston.
Oh,
It
okay.
is.
So now let's see. That's not full screen for me, Karen. I don't know whether that's, yeah, that might help, or yeah,
So-
there we go. Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, essentially, Karen, when you do that, we just see your desktop. So whatever you see, we see, I think.
Yes.
Okay, so you, yeah, and I have two monitors,
Oh,
and I was practicing earlier, and I was able to make it work on the other monitor, but this will work too.
so you might want to just put that at 100% or higher for the PDF percentage so that people
It's a
can
little
see a
bigger.
little clearer.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
How's that?
Perfect.
I can see it.
All
I
right.
can see it too. So Geordie, you want to tell us what's going on?
Sure. We got a request from our district advisor at the state to separate the land and power lines that NEPCO, New England Power Company, has in our town. And so we said, sure. And then we went in, and it turns out that New England Power Company doesn't own any land in our town. They have the high tension lines that run south to north. They had a pole that was a problem at the entrance to the park and ride. So it's that high tension line that goes through Putney from Dummerston up to Westminster. Since the townwide reappraisal in 2014, we have been billing them for 13.07 acres, and they've been paying. But as it turns out, they actually don't own any land. So in order to fix that, we have to put in this errors and omissions and remove the, is it 170? I think that's, I can't quite read the. Well,
2,700.
yeah, that's the 13 acres that they've been billed for. So we need to reduce their assessment by that much. The 4.4 million is self-reported. They tell us every year what they are worth, and it's adjusted by our CLA each year. So the 13 acres were given to them before anybody who's currently working in the town hall was there. So we have no historical reference. And we didn't know about that it was wrong until this year.
Who does own that land?
Well, we managed to, with the help of Nimric, who's our software provider, run a report, and nobody. It's not actually land. Somehow it was attributed to them, but it's not missing from anywhere. So go ahead.
Does our system not set up to catch the fact that we were overbilling by 13 acres?
No, there's, what's that?
The total number of acres in town, that's a fixed amount, and we bill out a certain amount.
Well, every time there's a survey, the total number of acres in town may switch a little, and we actually don't know if the border of the town were drawn and then all the town roads taken out, and the highways, because and railroad, there are things that are not measured. We could spend a lot of money and get it figured out, but in fact, we don't know.
Gotcha.
We did find a bunch that are off by a half an acre or a couple of hundredths of an acre that we'll fix for next year.
And that
Mr. Chairman?
a lot of that is just remnant of historical because, many of the parcels of land, as you know, were sold plus or minus back
Right.
in the day and were never surveyed. So every time there's a land transfer now, if it requires a survey, which is if it's outside of a family member, is that right, Geordie?
No, if anybody wants it, we had a transfer that doesn't tell you anything as long as the buyer's happy.
So it's not a requirement.
No, so there's two software packages, one that says this is how many acres the person owns, and then there's a different program where you
Right.
put in and figure out the value, and if there's nothing that says what you've added up in here, is a different number of acres than that. So it's data entry error over the years that contributes to that.
And that also gets refined every year by GIS related stuff, GPS related stuff.
The GIS is a factor if we don't know.
Right.
It's one of the ways of telling if you have no way, if there's no meets and bounds or survey. GIS is one of our ways to say, well, it's this big.
Mr. Chairman?
Hang on one second. David, you had a question?
Karen, what does this mean? What is the lost revenue per year for not building out these 13 acres? And are they asking for any kind of compensation from the past?
It's around 2,400 per 100,000, so it's 1 3/4 of that about for this year. We can't do anything going backwards in time without them coming to ask for an abatement, which would be something they would do after we did send them a notice that we've changed their value and that they can grieve it. They won't, but if they want money back, they have to go through the town clerk and seek an abatement, and then it comes to the Board of Abatement.
And what we usually would do in a situation like that, David, is ask them to take it as if we owed them a chunk of change from past, we would ask them to take it as a credit going forward so that we don't have to have cash outlay for it.
Okay.
You know, we're responsible, if we grant the abatement, we're responsible to pay it, and we would have to do cash outlay if that's what they requested, but typically people are willing to have it just put forward as a credit. So, Barry, you had a question, and then Mr. Fairman, we'll go to you.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So they actually do have land that we just said they had 13 acres more than they actually have. Is that accurate?
No, they actually have no land. They have some transformers, but they're on poles up in the air. So they own power lines and poles.
So when I asked who owns the land that has the 13 acres, you said nobody owns that, and I don't really understand how that's possible.
So as far as we know, it doesn't. It's 13 acres that was attributed to them, but we don't know what land that was or where it came from, and
you don't have a definition of the survey of the land that you thought was theirs. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So Josh, if there's no land, it can't be a credit.
Right, because we're not going to be billing them.
No, we will continue billing them because with utilities, they pay on their infrastructure. So
the transformers. Okay.
I mean, they still will be paying taxes. It's a different rate. I don't know how this works, but
okay.
But they've got $4,419,900 worth of infrastructure in the town that they will pay taxes on. I don't remember how that rate works, but it's different it's not sort of a standard residential rate, but they pay a fixed amount on that. So we could issue it as a credit going forward. But.
So so that on this form that we're looking at, the first number was what we were charging because we thought they had 13 acres. The second number,
no, it's not what we're charging. It's what their value is.
Okay, it's what their value was. No, I don't mean that's the word. I'm sorry. It's what we're charging on. It's the amount we're charging on, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the second number is the amount we're charging on now that we know they don't have those 13 acres. Is that correct?
Correct.
And the third number is the difference between the two.
Got it.
Right.
Thank you.
And that number, I mean, what we're able to tax the amount we're able to tax them, I believe, is set by the Public Service Board. Karen, is that right? Do you know?
I don't know that for sure.
We receive evaluation from them each year that says this year this is what we're valued at. Our poles and lines and transformers and everything is valued at X number of dollars, and
Right.
get that each year. So that's how we That's what goes into the grand list.
And then I think that, oh, but then, okay, so then did they get charged regular residential rate for that? I don't think
I'm not I don't see the tax bills. They may have not get charged for the schools or something, but I'm not, I'd have
Yeah.
to look.
Anyway, Mr. Fairman, you had a question or comment?
Mr. Chairman, I can clarify all of the above. I am
Good.
sitting about 100 feet from that transmission line, and I happen to have confirmed recently with the town clerk that the land beneath it belongs to, the land beneath it right here belongs to Putney Landing LP, which is one of Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust's properties. So at least here, the transmission line is passing through a right of way, but there is no land ownership.
Right. Yeah. David.
Do we have any idea if they do ask for an abatement, what that would be, what the abatement would be, how many years we owe them the 2,400 per 100,000? And do we have any idea what that would be?
This came, I've got a really bad echo.
Yeah, we've got somebody needs to mute.
I'll mute, see if it happened.
So 2014 is when this came to be, so they could go back as far as 2014.
Well, 2014, but we don't know that 13 acres showed up in 2014, or we do, Geordie?
We do. We went back through grand lists, and that's where it showed up in the reappraisal year. So did it have something to do with that? Perhaps. We spent a fair amount of time on the phone with the people at NIMRIC and district advisors and going through our stuff, and we don't know. We can't find it. We can't find a reason for it.
Okay. All right. So David, would you like to make a motion to accept the recommendation of the listers and approve the errors and omissions form as submitted?
You said that so well, I'll just say so moved.
Good. And Barra, would you like to second that? Did we lose Barra, or is she here?
There she is.
I muted because I wasn't sure if I was creating the echo, but I would like to second the motion.
Great, thank you. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to accept the recommendation of the listers to approve the errors and omissions. Karen, if you could scroll back to the top on your, we're looking at the, to errors and omissions certificate related to property owned by the New England Power Company. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
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 Good. Thank you, Geordie.
Thank you. I will see you later.
Thank you, Geordie.
That's all
Thanks,
you have.
Geordie.
Just have the one, Geordie.
Unless anybody has other questions for me, I'm all done.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jordan.
Bye, Geordie. Thanks.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Okay. So next is fire department overview. Tom Goddard, that would be you.
Good evening. Just to give you some follow-up insight from the July timeframe, as far as the fire department goes. Since July, we've had actually 5 new members join the department. 3 of them are certified firefighters. 2 are certified EMTs, licensed EMTs. All of them are progressing very, very well within the department's training program. They're all doing very well. We're hopeful to put another drive on, so to speak, for new people over the winter, the early part of the winter. Aside from that, our junior member program, there are 4 folks that have been working on that a lot. We've gotten to the point where All of our initial documents that need to be in place have been provided to Karen in order to provide to our town attorney for review. At the same time, VLCT, the risk management folks, are reviewing the same documents. So we're waiting to hear back from those folks. Any modifications we may need to make or that are suggested, we'll do. And then our goal is January 1st or thereabouts. As long as everything comes into line, our junior program will be up and running. So that'll be good.
And you have some current membership in that, Tom, or sort of?
No, not currently, because we don't have everything in place yet that we need to have for our protection and the town's protection. But as soon there are some people in the wings that some of our folks have reached out to. So we're hopeful that once the program's up and running, that they'll be the first ones a part of it.
Good.
Above and beyond that, there have been a bunch of projects in-house that we've been working on. Some have been completed, others have just started up. And so those are ongoing. Training and education has been huge so far this year. And we're anticipating, as best we can with the whole COVID related thing and restrictions that are being put in place, right through next summer. There'll be a lot more training and education going on, both outside the department and a lot that we're bringing into the department. Aside from that, overall, morale is very good. A lot of positivity within the department. A lot of the folks are looking for some different things, some different ways for us to grow, some different directions to go in. And we're just concentrating on getting things done.
Sounds good. I think at least one of your new people is a return person. Is that correct, Tom, or are you not?
Actually, two of them are.
Two of them are. And where did you find the other folks? What's been your method?
One of the folks recently moved into town. And then one of the folks is a Landmark College student who came highly recommended to us. And that equates to 4, right? And then the 5th one was a person here in town who just time freed up.
Good. And do you attribute that to you being more active in your recruiting, or just in the moment?
Just in most of it was in the moment.
Yeah.
In all
Tom,
reality, in all fairness.
Do you have everybody that you would want? I mean, do you have the
Absolutely not.
numbers? No. What's the
Absolutely
numbers
not.
that you would want?
Well, I've maintained for several years now that 50 would be the optimum number.
Okay.
With the clear knowledge and understanding that not every time the tone goes off will all 50 people go. In order to have appropriate numbers consistently, that's the total number that we would need.
And what is it that you have now?
Right now we've got 23.
Okay, thanks.
And what's your call volume been like, Tom? I know early in the first part of COVID, it was way down, but it's bounced back largely, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's bounced back, and we're actually, even with essentially little over 2 solid months of virtually nothing. None of us in the region were doing anything really. Even with that today we're well ahead of where we were at last year at this time.
You're talking calendar year.
Calendar year, yes. Yeah, calendar year.
Yeah.
Okay. So this morning when I polished things up again, I think we're at 498.
Wow.
And we've got another 6 weeks to go. So we'll be right in our normal 5.25, 550 range.
So could I ask a question, Josh?
Yeah, please.
Because I'm new to this, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. You were talking about calls in relation to COVID. So you said there was quiet for a while. Are you now getting calls where people are wanting your help in relation to the disease? Or
No,
is it, no, okay.
during the initial phases of COVID, when there was the stay-at-home order,
Yeah,
and people were abiding by that.
Yeah.
During that time frame, our call volumes across the board just plummeted because
Okay.
people weren't out and about. There wasn't the activity
Okay,
that produces responses.
okay.
And then once that order was lifted,
Got it.
then call volumes started to pick back up again.
Okay,
And I
thanks.
think that also related to that was the fact that Putney School and Landmark both went home. Students all went home last year at spring break time and didn't return for the spring semester, but motor vehicle accidents were down. But the other thing that's related to that also is that people are definitely pushing aside that, you know, the news is bearing out that, or the data is bearing out that people are putting things they should be getting treated for on hold. So
Yeah.
I think there were a whole bunch of different things that contributed to that. But all right, good. So unless anybody else has any other questions about sort of general fire department activity, Tom, you want to give us a little update on current COVID related stuff?
Yep. And it'll, at this point, it's just going to be a review of things through last Friday, pretty much. The reason for that is tomorrow we have more virtual meetings that we're anticipating. We're gonna learn a lot more information from, and a lot more guidance, and perhaps some additional restrictions, but we don't know yet. So as of today, as far as number of cases are concerned, there are a total of 3,161 cases in Vermont. 51 cases were reported yesterday, and of those 23 there are 23 active cases within Windham County. I don't have an accurate number of active cases within the town of Putney. But if we want to be realistic about things and not have our heads in the sand, we all just need to know that COVID is everywhere. COVID is here in Putney, and it will continue to be. As of last Friday, the governor issued some guidance / imposed some restrictions. Obviously, the travel restrictions have been increased, and the new guidance and new requirements regarding quarantine and testing upon return from traveling. If you want me to go into specifics on that, I can, but that's been made pretty well clear via the press and so on and so forth.
And the easiest place for the general public to access that, Tom, is the VT. It's the Department of Health.gov. Is that
exactly? Yep. Vermont Health Department. Yep. Just Google Vermont Health Department, and it'll automatically bring you to all their COVID related events.
Yeah.
Obviously, one thing that is becoming problematic as citizens simply don't like it is the prohibition now on multifamily and multi-household gatherings. Since Halloween, just in case folks have not heard this statistic, since Halloween, 71% of the COVID cases in the state of Vermont have been directly attributed to family gatherings and larger social gatherings, whether indoor or outdoor. So that's where the governor came from with these gatherings being prohibited. Everybody understands that that could become problematic for some folks, especially obviously the holiday season is upon us. However, what the governor is saying very, very clearly is that people need to prioritize their needs versus their wants. And the true need, if based upon all the information that we're getting, and what this whole thing is going to look like over the next 14 to 18 days, if we have a chance to stop this, it's going to involve people doing what they're being asked to do, not socializing, and continuing to wear masks and social distance. That's what's going to do it. Stop gathering to any degree, and do what's asked of us. That's what's going to keep it under control. Bars and clubs are no longer at all allowed to provide in-person service, and restaurants may provide in-person service until 10 o'clock p.m. and then they have to stop with the in-person. So those are from the state. Those are that's the most current guidance and what we shall not do. So again, tomorrow I'm assuming that there's going to be more, and once there is, again, I'm in touch with Karen every day in the select board. If we need to bring you into the loop immediately, then we obviously will. But you'll get the same information as I give to Karen. As far as the department specifically, we've modified a few things. We'll continue to modify as we need to. Right now, the station is pretty much off limits again, with the exception of emergency services people and essential services people. That may change even more as we go forward. And again, we're trying to maintain business as usual, but it's going to be difficult to do that. Already, as far as fire prevention inspections or any municipal related inspections, those are dwindled down to almost non-existent unless we absolutely have to. There are only 2 of us that will do those inspections. And again, we will only do them if we absolutely have to. If there are ways around it, then those are the ways that we'll go. All of our non-emergency work is being scrutinized. Non-emergency responses are being scrutinized very heavily at this point. And if there's a way or if unless there's an absolute need for those non-emergent responses, then we're not committing to them. Aside from that, that's where we're at right now. And again, we're going to wait and see what tomorrow brings. We've actually have two conferences tomorrow, one late morning and one early afternoon, and we'll see what we bring from each of those, and then go from there.
Sounds good. Farah had a question.
Actually, I just wanted to share that in keeping with what Tom said about that this is in Putney, COVID is in Putney, Vermont Digger had an article on November 13th that showed a bunch of different towns in the state and what the percentage increase has been since October 21st. And Putney was the 12th town on that list. We had the 12th highest percentage increase. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's those numbers are always take a little interpretation because the state of Vermont, for example, we were, as far as all the states were concerned, we were by far the highest on the percentage increase, and yet our number of actual cases of detected in that time period were still the lowest of any state on the entire list. So, but yeah, no, it's definitely around, and we need to be careful. So, David, you go ahead.
I have a question for you, Tom. This is just for
Yes.
you. How are you doing?
Good.
You good?
Good. Yep.
Good.
Excellent. Okay.
Again, and just so you're aware as well, one thing that two specific points I forgot to mention. One, relation to all of our folks, everybody knows very clearly at this point, especially with common cold and flu season upon us, if they feel ill to any degree, they're not to be around us. They're not to respond to calls or anything. And if the situations warrant then we'll require them to have a COVID test before they come back. Item 2 that I had forgotten. I know, David, you have asked me over and over again throughout this whole thing, where we stand right now with PPE.
Right.
Same as everybody else, we don't have enough. So we're still in conservation mode. Just earlier this afternoon, I got an email from one of our main suppliers that we've had a standing order with since March, and they still aren't able to fill the order. So we're still on back order. So again, we've got some options within our mutual aid system. If one specific area starts to run through PPE, then we can get some more from our partners. Other than that, we're just going to have to wait and see.
Well, I want to say thank you for everything you do, Tom. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And one other comment, that heart-shaped rooster plaque over your head is so
You
beautiful.
like that? You like that? Good. I'll make you one.
All right. Well, thanks, Tom. As always, you're welcome to stay with us, but I'm guessing you have other things you might want to do with your evening. So Tom and I had expressed, Barry, you may or may not know that when the pandemic first started, we, for quite a period of time, had regular meetings weekly as a result. And I have made it clear to Tom that if he feels that there's any reason we should do that at some point, then we will go back to that. We will probably go to having weekly meetings for at least a couple weeks in early December as a result of budget season. So it may be sort of a moot point depending, but hopefully, Tom, we won't see you any more than we have to.
I hope not. Don't take that personal.
All right, good.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
buddy.
you.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, so next on our list is how much debt should the town of Putney get? Mr. Fairman, do you want to comment on this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Since we last spoke, I have been invited to the Vermont Bond Bank Winter Bonding Seminar, which is tomorrow afternoon. Karen will be there as well. And of course, when we last spoke, I directed everyone's attention to the Vermont Bond Bank's How Much Debt Should We Get? And their 2020 Vermont Bond Bank debt medians. I don't know whether anyone's had a chance to look at them. And what I would like to do between this evening is simply ask everyone if there's any questions they would like me to ask during the Vermont Bond Bank webinar tomorrow afternoon.
So,
Can I just ask, Howard, I'm sorry I know you've been doing this for a while, but can you just give a very brief summary of what this situation is and what you're going to the meeting for?
Yes. Well, first, I don't know whether you have been furnished a copy of what I presented at the November 4th Select Board meeting, but briefly, I refer to at the October 21st meeting, Select Board members wondered how much debt should the town of Putney get, and I volunteered to research this question. And it just so happened that the December 2020 issue of the Vermont League of Cities and Town News included how much debt should we get by Michael Gauguin, who is Executive Director and Secretary of Vermont Bond Bank. And that refers to their Vermont Bond Bank debt medians, which simply says among Vermont municipalities, this is the median value of various parameters that can be used to judge whether a town has the right amount, has more debt than it should, or could actually afford to borrow more. One point they make, of course, is there is no hard and fast answer to this question, just as there is not in our personal finances. To some extent, it has to do with, do we have to buy it now? And sometimes it has to do with we're getting a good deal now, and sometimes it has to do simply with we want to do it now. So this seemed to be the best information available, so I directed everyone's attention to it. Now, I didn't know at that point whether or not I would be invited to the Vermont Bond Bank webinar. The reason I'm going to be there is to ask my own questions, because we will be in direct communication with the experts on the subject.
Thank you.
Josh?
David, go ahead.
I have lots of questions about the bond bank stuff, and Karen and I have been talking a lot, but I'd like to make a statement that it's a little bit bigger. But it's germane to this. For a long time, the fiscal health of the town of Putney and how much debt we have has been a concern of mine, and of a lot of people that I know in this town. It's been a concern and an interest for a lot longer than I've been on the select board. And because of that, Karen and I have talked a lot of times about this, and we've tried to find a way to come up with an assessment of the fiscal health of our town. And I came across a survey, a study done by an institute in Vermont, and you fill in all kinds of values of general fund and long-term debt and debt service amounts and so on, and come up with, it was done by the Ethan Allen Institute. And we got the survey, and Karen's been working hard at filling those numbers in to try to come up with an idea of what our fiscal health is. They came up with a scoring system from 0 to 100 based on lots of formulas between various parts of our finances. I don't know how else to say it. Karen, do you want to take it from here? You probably could speak about this better than I could.
Sure, David. So we've been looking at the debt servicing that Putney currently carries. And we do have 3 long-term bonds that we're paying on that are going to go out to 2040. And those numbers, I gave them to David. But let me go back to my other sheet. Hold on a minute. Bear with me, people. Is this going to show up? Oh, come on. All right, so this is our long-term debt. And between the gravel pit, the water, and the sewer bonds that we currently carry, which will go out to 2036, 2041, and 2045. These numbers down here represent 5 years, okay? So this is the gravel pit here. And this would be the water.
Karen, can you add, put the percentage up more to make it a bigger on your screen? I think it's at the bottom on the right is where you make it bigger.
Yes. How's that?
Great.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's great.
So for 5 years, these would be the numbers, right? And then I took and I added them all up, and then I times it by 4 to give us 20. So here you have $3,731,157 in debt. And that's a rough estimate because we know that interest will drop, you know, as we keep paying the loans. But for the next 20 years, this is what we're looking at. Now,
And that's just 3. That's just the gravel bank, the water, and the sewer. That's not a fire truck. That's not the fire station. That's not road.
Well, there's a 4th number there, though, the 922,000. Go back to where you were, Karen. The 932,000, that's general operating expense debt? What is that?
no, that's these 3 numbers all added together.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, yep,
And that's after 20 years, not 10. That's 20.
that's 20 years, yes.
So one of the things,
Sorry, just to be clear, that's the total outlay for us in a 20-year period.
For those 3 bonds,
For those 3 bonds, right, exactly.
correct.
And what David is saying is that's only those 3 bonds. It doesn't take into consideration all the other things that we are talking about. Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
Which is why Karen and I sought out this other formula, which does take those other things into consideration, and we're waiting to see how we land in that. And a
Right.
little general overview of the Ethan Allen study, which might be helpful for other people. Of the 30 towns that were surveyed, only a few of them came out fiscally healthy. Most of them were marginal at best, and a lot of them were below marginals, had scores below 50. And
Right.
So, in looking at the formulas that they used, it seemed like their formulas were right on to, our revenues versus long-term debt on servicing that debt, interest, so on and so on. And when I look at the bond bank definitions and ratios, one of them that stands out, 10-year debt payoff. If we look at our debt payoff and we look at what the median is, the median is 69.92% payoff in 10 years. I don't believe we're going to be near that. I don't think, even just for those 3. So I don't know exactly what questions would be asked at the seminar, but I'd be asking that one. And if we look at government activity, long-term debt per capita, the median is $513. The figures that I came up with were over $1,700 per person. So if those are accurate, we're 3 times that already. Now, I know those are just 2 figures out of a much bigger formula, but those 2 things stood out to me.
So I'm wondering, partly because I'm new, but partly because this is important. And I also, I have a concern that the people who have lived in this town all their lives, I don't want the taxes to go up to the point where they are stressed and can't live in their own homes. So that's a big concern of mine. So I'm wondering about having a special meeting specifically to talk about well, obviously the budget is coming up, but rather so that we can have, I don't know if this is possible, can we have a meeting where we don't have all the other agenda items and we just have the budget and the financial issues that we can talk about more in depth?
We can do that. We can do, so right now we're bi-weekly. We're going to have 3 meetings in December. I'm not sure what town meeting looks like right now, Bara, but my intent is to have public informational meetings to invite the community to join us virtually to discuss the budget. So once we get it into draft format,
Yeah,
then we're going to roll it out to the community, and we'll put it up on the website. They can grab it there. If I can get proficient in sharing the documents,
you're doing great.
We'll do it right through these meetings too.
Yeah.
But we will be, I'm just warning this board right now, when we start doing the budget, we're going to be doing line by line items for each department.
Yeah, and I don't know, I mean, David and Josh, I don't know if that's something that you would want to have a special meeting, but for me, this is something that it's important to me and it is new to me, so that would be helpful. And the way that I learn best is if I can get all the written information ahead of time and read it, and then come to the meeting and be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
I feel like it would be a good idea, and I'm really glad to hear you say what you said about being concerned about people who've lived here a long time and who maybe it's getting harder to pay their taxes and stay in their home. And I think that it's part of even a much bigger discussion about, the standard of services that we provide and how much it costs. I know that's something that Josh has mentioned for a long time, and it has a lot to do with town meeting too, because a very few number of people show up and make the decisions on what happens. And oftentimes, I've heard him say this many times, the people who are most affected by that oftentimes don't show up and don't have a voice. So I feel very strongly for having a voice that way too. So I'd be glad to have a meeting.
And maybe if the town meeting is going to be virtual, maybe more people will go who wouldn't go before. I know I'm more active than I was before because it's virtual now.
I think that'll be true to a certain, for some that'll be true. I think the downside is that it requires internet access and a computer. So
Yeah.
there are inherent disadvantages to some just based on that.
Yeah.
The
I'm
other
going to
thing,
talk more about that later.
yeah, the other thing that I think we need to keep in mind is that our deadline with the bond bank, if we want to think about applying for a bond for the purpose of purchasing the fire truck, our deadline, Karen, is December 15th. Is that correct?
December
11th,
It's December 18th.
18th.
It's on a Friday.
So,
And, yeah.
the other thing I think that's very hard in analyzing this information, and I haven't looked at it anywhere near as much as I need to, and I think the Ethan Allen Institute study is good, or survey, however it's termed, is good because, I mean, when you look at medians, for example, it's not clear to me what those are based on as far as those, because they're not per capita. So what does that represent? I mean, just because it's median for a town in Vermont, if we're not looking at a per capita number, then it's not really a clear comparison for us. So,
Right.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
And also, we're taking medians, and are we taking medians from towns that are in distress? And should that median be used for us if that's not where we want to be? And so many other factors to think about in this, and so that's why this study felt good to me, because it wasn't from the bond bank or any other lending institution, and it was one being done across the board. Karen can fill you in more about all the different ratios. There's so many ratios taken from our last audit.
So can you either direct us to the link to get it, or can you send that to me, Karen, or David, email that to me, the Ethan Allen?
Yep, we can do that. And just to let the board know that, so I had the spreadsheet and it went on and on and on and on. And all the information comes out of the audit. So our results will come up from our 2019, so June 30, 2019 audit, okay? Because our 2020 audit's not done yet. So I think it's going to be interesting. And there were some calculations in the spreadsheet that were not working. So the people that have the spreadsheet right now, they're going to put the calculations in there. There's a couple other numbers that they needed, and they're going to get those numbers, throw them in there as well, and then we should see a final report by December 2nd. I'll probably see it sooner than that, Bara, but I wanted to roll it out for the December 2nd meeting.
Okay. So yeah, in order for me to be able to be intelligent at all, I kind of need like a few hours at least before the meeting for me to look at it. So if I get it, just an hour or two before the meeting, I probably won't be able to talk about it until the next meeting.
Well, I'm hoping to have it way before then.
Oh, great. Okay.
And I can send you the report. I can send you the financial statements from 2019, although they're on our website.
Okay.
Because, that's where most of the numbers come out of there.
So
for me,
there is also a copy, Bara, and I don't know whether, but there's a copy of the 2019 audit available.
Okay.
I can't remember, Karen, do we have that? We have that posted, don't we, somewhere?
Yeah, it's on our website, Josh.
So if you want an overview of the town finances, that audit is helpful for that.
Yes, very.
Okay, so yeah, what would be helpful for me is, because I don't know what I don't know. I don't know which things I should be looking at. So Karen, I don't know if you, or David, since you have both been working on this, if you can just give me an idea of, okay, these are the 5 documents that we'll be looking at and evaluating and working from and putting together, and interweaving the information. And then you tell me what those 5 are. I can read them and get up to speed at least a little.
Okay.
So what I wanted to say, Karen, is if you think Do you think having this information by the meeting on the 2nd gives you enough time from the 2nd until the 18th to prepare a bond if that's what we decide to do? Or do you need to know that sooner than the 2nd? Because it seems like knowing what this will tell us is very important to deciding whether or not we take out another bond.
Correct, David, because if we fall in, the distressed, category, then, and we borrow more money, of course, we're going to be in trouble, I mean, even if we're in the marginal, is that something the board wants to, do you want to borrow another $500,000, There's only 4 towns, in this survey that are healthy. And honestly, I don't know if they're healthy, today,
Right.
Right.
And with COVID and the loss of state revenues, they're not lending money for projects like transportation projects. Everything's on hold. We were supposed to receive $115,964 for our hold harmless payment from the state of Vermont. It was supposed to be in our bank account on November 2nd. And I just got an email tonight after I had called Jill Remnick with the state of Vermont, and those payments have been delayed.
Yeah,
So,
I think,
$115,000 is a lot of money, and I think we need to be cautious because we don't know what's going to happen in 2022.
I think Josh said it best when he said there's times to be a cheap Yankee. I think.
But I honestly think this survey, Ethan Allen, is going to help us. I'm going to listen to what the bond bank has to offer tomorrow because I'm going to be sitting in that webinar as well. But this board does need to make a decision about, financing the fire engine. And I mean, you can't make no later than December 2nd.
Josh, were you going to say something?
Well, I think, Karen, that the deadline on the 18th is not actually for a completed bond bank application. It is for whatever the proper term is for saying that we have the intent to apply for a bond. Is that correct, or am I wrong?
No, the application will have to be submitted.
It will on the 18th. Okay.
You have to have it done. Okay. Right. So, do you know of any other state funding or any other funding that is delayed or has been, denied so far besides that one?
The structures grant has been pushed back.
I think transportation funding, all transportation funding is on.
Yeah, all transportation funding is going to be impacted, but we don't know to what extent yet. I was at a Wyndham Regional Planning Commission meeting, and like I said last time, Molly Burke was there, and there's money for projects for 21, but they have no idea what's going to happen in 22.
Got it. Okay.
And that could impact like your paving grants as well. So major structures, paving grants, and Brian doesn't have any projects on the horizon for either one of those, but still, if we do have a project, it might be 3 years out or, further, who knows?
Where are we in the current audit, Karen?
The audit has been completed. Samantha Ruggles was down here last week with Alyssa and I, and she was able to get everything she needed in one day. They're going to give us a report, and then I'm going to have them speak to the select board as well. I haven't seen the draft audit yet. We should see it like, I don't know, in a week or two.
Are you
But,
aware of any findings or not?
So we only had to make 2 journal entries, which is really, really good. Any more than 10, they kind of frown on us, but there's going to be some minor recommendations, just clean up some housekeeping, with accounts payable and
But no
house.
big material findings.
Yeah, no. So
It might
I
just
think
be
it went
interesting.
well. It
Good.
went well, Josh.
And how do you feel about them as a firm? This is what, our second year with them? Is that right?
No, this is our first year.
Is it our first year? Okay, yeah.
Yep.
Sorry.
The chemistry was really good. Alyssa did a lot of the work, most of the work. I'd say she did, 3/4 anyway. A lot of it had to be uploaded to their server. And then, Alyssa worked with Sam going back and forth for extra documentation, and we provided more documentation when she got here. So it seemed to go really well.
Good job, you two.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. We might want to ask them. I don't know how. We might want to ask them what their opinion about an additional bond would be. They might be in as good a position as anybody to give us, an opinion about that, and they may or may not be willing to do that. But I would say, if we're gonna, did you say when we're gonna meet with them? Is that gonna be at the December 2nd meeting or after that?
I don't have any date yet, Josh, until
Okay.
I see the final draft.
Yeah.
And then once I get that out to you, I'll set up a meeting so they attend virtually
Okay.
and give us an overview.
I would just be interested in their opinion as to whether they feel that we're in a position where we could healthily borrow more or not.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
just to clarify, when you're referring here to someone's opinion, whose opinion?
The people who are doing our audit for us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Josh, just before we move on, I would be interested in having a special meeting to talk specifically just about the finances. Is that something that David and Josh, you think it would be helpful for you, or should I just meet with Karen on my own?
I certainly am happy to do that. Budget season, doing the budget tends to be sort of that discussion. So I guess what it might want to be is sort of a more global meeting in advance of entering budget season, just to get a big picture look at it. Because as Karen said, then, we really go through things,
Line by line.
It's not always line by line, but it sounds like Karen would like to do that. That's also, I think, somewhat an opportunity when we have our conversation with the auditors. There's a certain amount of opportunity there to ask specific questions. I'm happy to do that if it feels like it's going to be valuable to everybody. David?
I'm totally happy to do it, and I think that probably a combination of the two things, if Karen has the time and wants and willing to do it with you, would be best. I know that for me, for the last year, she's held my hand practically before every single meeting, if not a couple times, but before every meeting, so I could go in, because I didn't know what I didn't know. And it's clear to me, you know way more about Robert's rules and that stuff than I did when I started this, and way more comfortable speaking in public. So she's helped me a lot, and maybe a combination of the two would be great. And then you would know what you've learned by that point, and you would know better whether or not you think you need a meeting above and beyond what we're going to have for meetings.
So then I'm going to just say, I'll talk with Karen on the phone and try to get all the documents that I need, review them, talk with Karen and see if I can get the answers I need. And then I'll just go with the regular meeting schedule unless I find that I need something more, and then I'll speak up.
Yeah, and just so, I don't know whether you know this, Bara, but we can have a special meeting anytime we want. We need to give appropriate notice and warning of it.
Right.
But, you know, David and I try and be reasonably flexible about that. You know, if it seems like there's a need and we have a time that makes sense, you know, if you come up with 10 different questions that you think we all ought to be discussing, then let's have a meeting about it.
Okay.
So don't be, you know, not that we want to have a whole lot more meetings than we need to, but at the same time, if it's valuable to all of us going into budget season, you know, I'm definitely in favor of that. And, you know, I mean, we depend heavily on our finance director, who in this moment is Karen, but historically we've had, you know, different people in that role. And, you know, we need to be well informed enough about this so that we can make good decisions, but we are definitely taking the advice of our finance director in how to manage things appropriately. So just sort of my perspective on it is that I try and know enough so that I feel comfortable with it, but I also depend on somebody else to be the finance director. So,
Got it.
Mr. Chairman,
yes, Mr. Fairman.
I've been taking notes on your excellent discussion, and I will incorporate that into what I do at the webinar tomorrow. I wish to offer two clarifications, however. While the Vermont Bond Bank is a nonpartisan organization, the Ethan Allen Institute is probably the oldest existing conservative Republican lobbying organization in Vermont. They are associated with the Koch brothers and with their American Legislative Exchange Council. So they definitely have a partisan perspective on this. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a partisan perspective, but one should be aware. And finally, if we actually are convinced that the town of Putney is a distressed town, I shall be challenging everyone to cut the budget of the town of Putney for the next fiscal year by 10, 20, or 30% across the board.
That sounds reasonable. I don't know whether anybody has any answer to this, but is there any sense that the nature of this particular survey that we are entering itself into, or not entering into, but that we are completing information for, has any sort of a partisan aspect to it that we should be particularly aware of? And that
what survey are you talking about?
The Ethan Allen survey, I mean, it's essentially figuring out a debt ratio, questions of debt ratio, isn't it, David?
It's ratios between many different parts of your budget and your income and how you spend your money over time. And I think that it responds to a few basic questions. Towns get into trouble because they overborrow and they can't service their debt. And towns are different than businesses. Towns can levy taxes. I understand that. And so, but I think that it speaks, the survey seemed pretty good. Whether or not there's a political agenda here or it's biased in any way, I don't think that I'm educated enough to know. Yeah. It seemed like the most comprehensive survey that I could find, and it seemed like the numbers would insulate us some from that. That the study or survey was based on 2 or 3 different types of assessments, and I have them written down. I don't know the names of them off the top of my head, that are commonly used to determine fiscal well-being. And so it seemed like, because it's numbers, it was insulated to a certain degree from any political agenda. Again, we can take whatever we take for findings from this and decide how we feel about it. It's not like we're committed to taking their determination and saying that, well, they say we're marginal. Well, let's look at that. We still determine how we're going to spend the money in the town of Putney to provide the services we need to provide. But we have to start somewhere and try to get some assessment. And
Yeah.
I think Farrah pointed at something, and I get it all the time from people that I've known my whole life in this town, that, well, for a lot of them, their single biggest bill a year is their tax payment.
Yeah.
And I know that we provide a very high level of services. And to what Howard said, looking at cutting things back is something that I'm very interested in looking at.
I am too.
So
Yeah.
May I
Yeah.
make a comment?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, David, but Mr. Fairman, we also have to pay attention to the school district and the education tax.
We do indeed, but we also do not have jurisdiction over that.
We don't, and I understand. I run a tight budget, and I shave off as much as I can, and 20, 30, 40%, that's a lot. And Farrah, just so you know, so our budgets are general fund, which is basically town hall and the fire station. And then we have a separate highway fund. And then we have the library budget. And we also have water and sewer, but the water and sewer are paid by the users. So those two budgets, the rates pay for what's in those two budgets. So we'll be going through all of them. We're not going to go through all of them at once. We'll do one at a time.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
I simply am accepting your proposition that you believe that the town of Putney that you collectively believe, have reason to believe that the town of Putney is financially distressed. Now, if the town of Putney is financially distressed, action must be taken, and the action that would be taken is to cut the budget across the board. Now, the reason I am doing this is because now you'll need to defend that the town of Putney is financially distressed, and we'll find out whether this argument can be carried or not.
Yeah, no, I don't think there was an assertion that we are distressed. I think that we are entering data into this. I'm calling it a survey. I'm not sure that's the proper term for it, based on the Ethan Allen Institute information, and to find out whether that survey shows us as distressed. I don't know whether we are or not, and I don't think anybody does because we haven't completed it yet, and I don't know everything that it's based on. I think that if we appeared distressed based on their survey, for me, what that would mean is, one, yes, we'd need to look at cutting, but we'd also need to look at how other folks are measuring this and make sure that that was an accurate measurement of what we were trying to assess. So,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that, and so noted, because that is exactly the question to ask of any survey which claims to say we have a definition of financial health, because there actually is no definition of financial health for a government. There is for a business, which is you are making a profit, or alternatively you are realizing a loss. But because governments have taxation powers, the measures are different. So thank you for that. It was asserted earlier that according to the Ethan Allen Institute study that was on the screen, only 5 towns in Vermont are financially healthy, which means that 246 towns, 241 towns by their definition are not financially healthy. Now, I'm seeing a couple of people saying, disagreeing, but did you not say that the study says that only 5 towns in Vermont are financially healthy?
yes, but it's only, I think that was what was said, but that's only a sample of Vermont towns. It's not all
Correct.
the towns.
30 towns were surveyed.
Well, in that case, the question is, the question is, what sort of a sample is this? Is this a sample that was taken to make it make it give a predetermined answer to the question, because there are 246 organized towns in Vermont.
Right.
I
No,
think, can I say
246
something?
is certainly not representative.
I just want to say something that my understanding is that we're going to use a lot of different documents to look at what is healthy, what isn't, and what is our situation and is it healthy, and that this is just one document. And we are very aware that now, especially, thank you, Mr. Fairman, but I was also aware that Ethan Allen is a conservative think tank, but I think it still could provide important information. And so given that we know where it's coming from, we will look at it in that way.
It's,
And
if we don't start looking whether or not this is the right survey, or there is a right survey, or if there is a right answer, if we don't start looking at the information, especially now with what's happening with COVID, then I think that we're derelict in our due diligence for the town. And so we got to start somewhere. And this is the first comprehensive one that I found. If there's any others out there, I would love to look at them. So
May I make a comment too? So
Yeah,
as
go.
the finance director, Mr. Fairman, we are not distressed. Okay, I'm comfortable. I mean,
That's on the record, right?
yes, we're not distressed. So,
but
I'm distressed.
but by what measure is the challenge in that statement and in an answer to it? I think that currently we are able to service our debt, and
Correct.
that would indicate that we are not distressed in this moment. I think that what we don't want to do is put ourselves in a situation in which we
Correct.
become distressed because our debt increases and our ability to collect taxes decreases.
Correct.
I think the other thing that's very important in that discussion is exactly what Farah brought up, and David has certainly brought up, and we talk about semi-regularly, is also just the strain that it puts on our taxpayers. I mean, it's one thing to say we can service our debt, but if we are slowly but steadily eroding our base of long-term residents who would like to live in Putney, but if we continue on the trajectory we are on, then they won't be able to, then that's a different measure of it. And how we assess that and what that means to us and how we choose to assume more debt or not is a different thing. And that also goes very much with what David is saying and that we've talked about before of the level of services we provide. I mean, we could choose to provide a whole lot less services and make things much more affordable, but that would be a very real choice we would have to make. And in doing that, we could presumably, not immediately, but over a longer term, reduce our tax burden on people. But that's a long-term process as well. I mean, it's not like we can suddenly choose to spend 60% less in the highway department, because that just isn't going to work right away. So
And
I don't know. Interesting topics, though.
This points out another subject too, and that is that, how do we get people involved and included in a way where everybody has a voice? Because, the tax burden doesn't fall fairly. There's people in this town who are provided incredible services who pay very little to no taxes, and yet they're citizens of this town and they get a vote. And there are people who pay disproportionately high taxes who might not be of the highest income. And so we need to get those people involved, and that speaks to town meeting. And we may have a new town meeting format this year. And
Right.
I know people have been saying this forever, and I've been saying it since I got on the select board. People need to show up and they need to speak up, because that's the way the system works the best.
And I would recommend
a small percentage of people make the decisions for a large group. Josh has said it many times. Oftentimes, the people who are most negatively impacted didn't have a voice. So,
and I
Mr.
would
Chairman?
Hang on one sec. Barra, go ahead.
Well, I just wonder, because it is a different situation because of COVID, I wonder about either as a select board doing outreach or asking somebody, one of the many committees that we have, doing outreach to actually contact people and say, we have to change some things in our budget. We need to have people come and be a part of it. how do we make sure you can come and do that? If you don't have internet, can you go to the library? You know, I don't know. But I wonder about actually being community oriented and community focused in that way.
I think it's a great idea. It's remarkably hard to achieve on a meaning scale. I mean, people, it's a choice that people make, and our ability to influence that choice is unfortunately fairly limited. Not that we shouldn't put effort into it, but it is hard to change it. And I think that you know, the other thing that's going to be predetermined to us probably by a certain degree is going to be statutory as far as how or executive in how we are required to run town meeting this year. I mean, it sounds like more than likely our budget is going to be by Australian ballot, which we've never done in my experience anyway. I wouldn't be surprised if it's happened here and there, but I'm not sure what the circumstances were. So that in itself is going to shift the nature of it, particularly if the deadline for that is in fact town meeting day. How do you have meaningful discussion in advance to the point that people can actually vote by Australian ballot on a budget and be informed enough to do that in an appropriate fashion? So it's challenging. Yeah, no, I mean, we talk a lot, Barra, as you know, certainly you've been aware of this recently, but you know, how to be better at outreach, it's really hard to do.
I recommend a phone tree.
Yeah, you know, but you know, particularly in the time of such high cell phone use, even just accessing people's numbers is very challenging.
That's true. Yep.
So there are always, and I'm not arguing against it. It's just there are always challenges. So we've spent quite a bit of time on this topic, but I think we should move on. But yes, Mr. Fairman, go ahead.
I just wanted to say earlier I complimented you on an excellent discussion. Now I would instead like to comment you on a superb discussion. I've never heard a better discussion, but I would simply offer the observation that regarding participation by citizens and by voters, everyone has the opportunity to participate. It is their choice not to. It is not our responsibility that they did not choose to participate.
That is definitely true, with the exception, as I pointed out before, of access. I mean, there are those that either don't have internet access or don't have a computer and or are underinformed about alternative methods by which they might access. So no, I agree, and it's frustrating that people often, I mean, town meeting being an example of that, you know, some people argue appropriately that it's a financial burden on them to attend town meeting and choose not to as a result. But most towns that have experimented with town meetings in either on the evenings or on Saturdays, et cetera, find that it doesn't change it as dramatically as they think they might. So yeah, no, access is important though. So I think, David, you were going to try and say something.
It is not our responsibility to get them to participate, but I believe it's our responsibility to represent them all, right? Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to say,
whether it's our responsibility to get them to participate or not, I think that encouraging it is valuable and meaningful and appropriate. You know, you can only do so much to encourage people, and then it's what it is. But it's that outreach aspect is challenging. Farrah, go ahead.
Just, I know you want to move on. Just one last comment is, I don't think it's our responsibility, but I know for myself that I have intermittently been involved. And if somebody were to call me and say, or reach out in some way and say, this is really important, we have this budget in the time of COVID, we need to figure this out, please come, I would come.
Yeah, no, and that, you know, the various different, I mean, you know, Putney Mutual Aid, which has been functioning as an organization during COVID, you know, may have ways of reaching out that we don't. We're also, you know, it has been pointed out to us, and I know it's true, and I know it's, from my perspective, a mixed bag, but social media is also a means by that we underutilize and perhaps could and should use more, but it holds its own challenges. So,
Well, and I also just wonder about like the sandwich board in front of town hall is very helpful. Like if we say really important changes in budget come to this town meeting, that might in itself get certain people to come that wouldn't have come otherwise.
yes, I won't disagree with you. It's frustratingly limited in my experience, and that's frustrating. But yes, anything we can do to encourage people, it's great. So, all right, good. Okay, so social agency virtual reports, Karen.
So with budget talks coming up in December, I want to start scheduling the social agencies to give a report to the select board. And I want to start with Group A, which are our Putney-based groups, and then move into Group B and then Group C. I realize that all these agencies do provide a written report for our town report, but as we're looking at budgets and the appropriations allocation is always done at the very end of the budget because that's what their percentage is based off of. But I also think it's important that they, especially with a new select board, that they give a virtual report to this group. So I'm going to start scheduling those for the 3 meetings that we have coming up in December. There are social agency thank you letters in your packet. So Barra, most of the social agencies that we appropriate money to, they'll send a thank you, and then they'll send a request for the following year. You can see the breakout of the allocations in the town report. I don't know if you still have one from March.
Me?
Yeah.
I got it online.
Okay, good. So that's a good resource too, to get yourself familiar with budgets and what else goes into the town report and budget wise. And then you also have the SeVEDS impact letter statement, Josh, that you had requested a few weeks back. So that's not the report that will go into their town report, but that is specific to your request.
Good. Thank you for getting that. I don't know whether we want to, we don't typically have in-person visits with every agency that's applying in any given year, and I don't think we necessarily need that. So I'm not sure with the virtual visits, sort of how we want to do that. I worry a little bit that could be remarkably time consuming for us.
If you do 5 or 10 minutes a piece,
right?
They can just call in and we'll take them one by one, and then I'll figure out how to do it so it's efficient.
So can I just clarify, Karen, you're wanting them to do this because with COVID, can you clarify why you're wanting them to do this if they don't normally do this?
They do it. I've had them come in before, Barrett, to speak to the select board, because what's important is to find out, so Putney Community Cares, Putney Community Center, and Putney Food Shelf. So I know right now that the Putney Food Shelf has been slammed because of COVID. Okay.
So Karen, just to clarify for me, sorry, are you only asking that the Tier A agencies do this, or are you asking for all to do it?
No, I'm going to ask for all to do it because Equity Inclusion is looking at the social agency appropriations as well to make sure it's fair and inclusive. And this report, which is in your packet as well, shows what percent these agencies might provide to Putney residents. This group B right here, as you can see, these agencies, which are all important, and they do serve, you know, Putney residents, but they also get funds through other towns. You know, whereas, you know, our 3 Putney organizations get money just from Putney. So it's important to know who they're serving, Vera.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it's going to change the way they're grouped, but it's something to look at.
So for me, just how I learn, I would learn more from seeing something written like you have shown us than them giving a verbal report, just for me to see numbers. That's personally.
Okay, well, this is one report here, but there's also a survey that they fill out. And I also will share those with you
Great,
when they come in and speak to you for like 5 minutes.
great.
So my
Okay.
question,
I think probably we need to really keep it to about 5 minutes though, Karen, because you're looking at, you know, there's a bunch of agencies here. And again, you know, we typically what we do is if somebody, either if we have questions or concerns about how one agency is doing something, or not how they're doing something, but why their appropriation should continue, then sometimes we invite them in. But other than the TRAs, we don't typically have people come in for an in-person thing. And I think we just have to be thoughtful about that because
Right.
it's going to be time consuming.
I can think of,
I think that submitting the numbers and submitting that, you know, they submit their requests, you know, perhaps what we should do is review those and decide whether we have specific questions. I don't know.
We can do it that way too, Josh. I mean, if you see someone on this list and you say, yeah, let's have them come in and, you know, see if they're doing more or, you know, whatever questions you might have for them.
in the letters that I saw, Karen, some of the questions that came up for me was, you know, how is it COVID impacting these people? If they can't serve people in person, you know, the gathering place shut down, both of their places. Does that mean they've cut their services by 75%, or are their services now costing twice as much because they're having to go out and see people? And, you know, does that mean maybe we should consider helping them more, or does that mean we should cut their allocation because there's no way for them to help people because they can't do it in person? And maybe we can come up with a series of questions that fits all of them, and we could ask them and get them answered prior to the meeting.
That's a great idea.
Right. And see, and that's the other flip side of it, David. You're absolutely right, because maybe some of these agencies aren't able because of the impact, you know. So I know it's a different year, but this may carry on for another year.
Yeah.
So Karen, would it help if you and I looked over these together and came up with some questions specific to what David was talking about? Would that satisfy your desire to have more information from them if we specifically like came up with 4 questions that we sent out to all of them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can do that. I mean, I know we're running out of time, and I'd like to talk to the Equity and Inclusion Committee and see where they're at, because they were taking a look at this as well. Now,
Yeah, they need to do that pretty quickly if they're, I know that we had that conversation and there was a discussion about them, but then I think that, I don't know, we need to keep them moving along because budget season is going to come and go quickly.
yeah. So something to think about. If you think you want a select few, you know, we can name them out and I can call them and just have them come in and, you know, come on virtually and speak to the board.
We do still have this ongoing issue also with Putney Community Cares as to doing the double allocation. And I really don't have a good solution to that. And I'm not sure how we want to I mean, you know, we can just keep doing it the way we've been doing it and just recognize that they provide, I mean, you know, if you look at their, well, yeah, I was going to say looking at their budget indicates that, but it doesn't really, because if you look at the food shelf, their budget is even greater. So,
Right. And Putney Community Cares is a good example to bring them in front of the board and ask the questions. I think you really need to look at Group A, Josh.
yeah, I agree.
You need to be fair this coming budget season.
No, I mean, and you know, there's of course overlap with these too, because the community center, for example, is the location where the food shelf is located. So, you know, presumably some of the costs that they bear is related to supporting the food shelf. And, you know, I know all the three of these agencies all work together, and many of these agencies work together. So there's overlap, but yeah. I think if you and Barra want to sit down and talk about it a little bit and see whether there are specifics that are helpful, and then maybe we can check in about that, that would be good.
Okay.
I'm just concerned that as we come into budget season looking to add, you know, several hours of time to our schedule is going to be a little tricky, but.
Well, that might be the extra meetings we might have to have.
Right. Great. Okay, so is that everything on that? I think so.
Yes.
Vermont Partnership for Fairness and Diversity update.
So the board asked me to reach out to Vermont Partnership for Fairness and Diversity, and I spoke to Curtis Reed. We had a good virtual meeting. Their approach is a lot different. It's not just about training. They do have a 10-year commitment with their clients. They're currently working with Burlington, Rutland, Bennington, Green Mountain Power, Vermont State Police, and you know, Vermont State Police has over 300 employees. So these are really large organizations. Mr. Reed told me I should call Bennington and talk to Don Campbell and you know, have a conversation with him what they're doing with Vermont Partnership and how it's helping them. And I'm not sure, I didn't do this statistics on Bennington, so I don't know how large they are. I don't know how many employees they have. So I need to make that phone call. Mr. Curtis's recommendations is that we create a strategic plan, we create a vision statement and a mission statement. The cost, and know that this is an investment. This would be an investment for the town, and it's long-term because it needs to serve not just the short-term issues that I don't want to say issues, but concerns. And so his price, his investment cost is $7,000 a day, $4,000 for half days. Coaching's like at $216 to $240 an hour. So we could be looking up to between $20,000 and $30,000. Because we're such a small municipality, you know, it may not take 10 years. But the key thing that he requires is that the board is like and 25% vested in working with Vermont Partnership for Fairness and Diversity. So I know we talked about training, and I know we have a proposal on the table from Mary Gannon and Dottie Morris for $6,450. So I'm leaving you with that information.
I mean, it sounds, it seems to me at this stage, I think that we need to explore the long term of this for us, but I also think there is, I'm not sure whether urgency is the right word, but there is a need to be engaging in education and progress in this realm sooner rather than later. And I had a good conversation the other day with somebody who works on this stuff with, I can't remember exactly which role it's in for her but she has worked extensively with Mary and Dottie and had a very positive experience. It's related to the larger businesses in the area and how they interact and how they choose to promote inclusivity, et cetera. And she spoke very highly of their experience with Mary and Dottie. And I think I almost feel like starting with Mary and Dottie and then how we progress through that and from there might determine that we want to really engage in a longer term relationship with somebody and explore the means of doing that. I think we also need to probably, if, as far as having a mission statement, et cetera, some of that is more centered in this moment in the Equity and Inclusion Committee, I think, than is in the Selectboard. And so until we have sort of a more solid working relationship there, then where we go, I don't know. So there's a question in the chat about quick recap of what the new option services include, and I'm not sure we have a clear answer to that, Karen. Do you? I think that it's a long-term commitment to training and progress in the realm of equity and inclusion. I think that Dottie and Mary's is pretty well defined as being educational for employees at this point, and I'm not sure whether you have a clearer idea of what engagement with the Vermont Partnership would look like.
I don't right now because I want to speak to Bennington.
Yeah.
And get a better understanding of how they're working with this organization. I like their philosophy, but again, I'm not quite sure we're there yet, to transition perhaps, to a longer term. And I feel it's very important that, we keep an open mind.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Fairman, go ahead.
At your last meeting, I mentioned a local organization, Equity Solutions, with whom I am familiar because my landlord is a client. So I communicated with them after the meeting to alert them to a possible opportunity to make a proposal to Putney. Their reply, which Karen received, is that they are disbanding as of December 31st, but they also included a list of a number of people whom they recommend to be considered. Karen has this list, and because she received a copy of the email, and my suggestion is that they be considered as well. Secondly, I have been a consultant, and also in corporate head offices, I have managed consulting assignments. And frankly, Vermont Partnerships terms of you hire us for 10 years. This is the first time I have ever heard of anything like this. Consultants are given a mandate, and when they have fulfilled the mandate, their pay stops, whether that takes 6 months or 3 years, but it is never a commitment to hire them for a given number of years just because that's their condition for doing business with you. So I am very skeptical about that means of doing business, except of course it is very good for them because it locks in their 10-year cash flow.
Yeah, I guess I don't know at this stage whether, my understanding is that the Vermont Partnership for Fairness and Diversity requires a 10-year commitment, and I don't know whether that's a 10-year commitment to ongoing work with them or basically just a very strong commitment to this work in general. So I think without defining that better, I don't know what that reality is. I guess my feeling would be we're just starting on this journey, and I don't think that we should be thinking of it as sort of having a beginning and an end. I think that there's going to be an evolution, and that it feels to me like working, just from my limited experience and from what I'm hearing, that working with folks like Mary and Dottie is a really good way to start that process, and that then we will learn from there. So I guess that's what I'm feeling in favor of. David, go ahead, and then Barrett.
I'm learning how to learn about this, and the only way that I have any means of judging whether or not the person is right is by meeting them, and I've only met Mary. And when I met Mary, I was very impressed, and that's really all that I have for information. You can read any sheet of paper besides the number it's going to cost the town, the amount of money. I really have no way of judging what the right program would be. So I think I really agree with you. We need to get our feet in the water here and learn how to learn, and it seems like doing it with Mary is a good idea. I haven't met her yet.
Barrett?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I saw one line item in the minutes from, I don't know if it's last meeting or the meeting before that, that there was a number, it was about $6,000, but I didn't go to that meeting. Can somebody just share what that entails, how many people it reaches, how many meetings there would be, that kind of thing?
I can tell you because I have it right here.
Great.
And Eileen Chute has a question too, so at some point we should.
Yeah, why don't you go through this and then we'll go to Eileen.
Sure. So the total cost for this proposal with Mary and Dottie is $6,420. That entails training and meeting sessions as detailed. So 3 hours for the first responders. So those are the on-call volunteer. 2 times 3, so 6 hours with select board and town employees, 6 hours with diversity committee, 1 debrief with subgroup of town employees and select board, and 2 hours post-session combined meeting, diversity and equity committee, and select board members.
And so this would all be virtual, and that would all, we would just have certain groups. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yep.
Do you want to send a copy of that to Barrett just so that if she doesn't have it,
Thank you.
And the other thing we haven't done yet, and I can't remember whether you requested this yet or not, Karen, but is a little bit more of a breakdown on sort of exactly how that would work, time frame wise, and how and where.
I asked about their schedule, and Dottie hasn't gotten back yet to Mary. So,
Okay.
and with the holidays coming in too, it's going to be really.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think realistically, with the holidays and with our schedule, we're probably looking after the first of the year regardless. But I think we should, if we're interested in moving forward with this, I think we should keep it moving. So,
Okay.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
yes, go ahead. Mr.
Wait
Fairman.
a minute. Wait, Eileen had a question.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, Eileen.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. So I think my question was answered. I was confused as to Vermont Partnership's 10-year commitment statement. But I did want to just put in a recommendation for Dottie and Mary. I've been in their training. I've been in Dottie's training once at Keene State when I was an employee there. And when I first started at Brattleboro, Dottie and Mary put on something very similar for all of the employees in Brattleboro. It's an excellent training. It was very safe training. Everybody felt welcomed and safe, and it really furthered the conversation. And Brattleboro is actually also doing an equity and inclusion. I don't know if it's called Equity and Inclusion Committee, but they're certainly moving forward in that direction as well. So I can't recommend them enough. They're phenomenal.
Great.
Good. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Eileen.
Mr. Fairman?
Mr. Chairman, I'm simply curious, is either of the people to whom this discussion is referring a member of any minority group?
Dottie is, she is of color. I don't know exactly how she identifies. Mary is Caucasian. I don't know how she identifies either. But
Thank you.
that's what I know. All right. Well, let's just keep that discussion going, and hopefully we'll hear back before too long from Mary/Dottie on what their schedule and sort of what next steps would be, and then think about how we go forward from there. And I think that, again, this is starting a process for us, and that as we learn about it, if we choose to engage with a longer term group, then I think we have to look at that more seriously and how we might approach it. But I think for us, or for me, my personal feeling would be in this moment, not that I don't think that there isn't 10 years of work here to do, because I think there is, but I think that it would be, that's a big commitment for us as a select board at a certain point in time in a municipality to make that kind of a commitment to say, yes, the town is going to do this until we know a lot more about it. So that's sort of where I'm feeling. Audit status. I think we basically went through the audit status. So
Yeah,
I think
we're good on that.
Okay. So next category is town manager's report. So that's up to you, Karen.
Okay, so the second installment of property taxes are due this Friday. We still have quite a big chunk to collect, about $700,000. So I think in the next 2 days we'll be busy, but people can leave their payment in the secure drop box right in front of town hall, right in front of the doors. We're checking that regularly right now.
And the deadline for that, Karen, I know we've had this discussion before. I mean, if people, will you be, the intent would be to empty that box at Friday afternoon at some point, or how does that work?
Yeah, so payments are due by end of business day on Friday at 4 p.m. So we know we'll have some payments over the weekend. Just get your payments down here, and then usually, you know, we'll take and put everything through on Monday morning. But after that, it's usually going to be late. And if anybody out in the community is having an issue because of COVID, please call the office.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't feel like you have to take on the burden. because either you're not working or you're sick or something, please call us so we can work something out. There are certain programs out there. They may not align with certain people, but just call us, because we rather try to help you than have you fall further behind, because February's payment will be an 8% penalty if it's late. So the Vermont COVID-19 Arrearage Assistance Program announcement, it is on our website and it has been sent to Audit Putney. This program is funding for people who have water and sewer and are delinquent because of COVID. So April 1st, if you have an outstanding water and sewer bill, or either or, go to our website, fill out the form. There's grant money to relieve that burden for you. If you have any questions about that, please call us. So right now, I did a aged receivables from April 1st through today, and there's about $4,212 that is eligible possibly for this grant funding. So again, if you're delinquent, you don't know how to navigate the system, please call us, because we can help with this process. Town meeting preparation for March 2nd, 2021. We kind of touched base on that. So Meg Mott, Jonathan Johnson, town clerk, and myself have already had one meeting. We're trying to get more information. Right now, town meeting is scheduled for March 2nd. So we're trying to figure out how to, proceed. We are going to proceed like it's going to be in person. So that means getting our budget set, getting our town report printed and sent out by the deadline, getting the articles approved, getting the ballots ready. We'll probably know in another month which way we're going to go. The state has not allowed any municipalities to change town meeting date. Only they can do that. I have heard that we can go to town meeting, and I'm going to suggest and recommend, because of COVID, that we meet at the library. It'll be the board. It'll be myself. It'll be Alyssa and Kim Monroe. And Emily Zervis will be there too. She's going to do all the technical stuff. But some towns have gone to town meeting, gone to the table, opened the meeting up, and then made a motion to table discussion for a later date to be determined. So if that's an option, we might have the possibility of doing an outdoor town meeting in April or May, where we can have the public there. The problem doing a virtual town meeting, Josh, David, and Bara, is we have to confirm that every single person online is a registered voter. And trying to keep track of 200 people online, I've never had to experience that. So right now it's still early to know what is going to be the best way to approach town meeting.
Yeah, I would think that we would, if we were going to do that, we'd need to have some sort of a pre-registry or something so that people could get approved, because I don't imagine there's a viable way for us to do that. I mean, typically it's a voter checklist with
Correct.
somebody sitting right there and we're able to confirm things. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure how we do that. But I just want to clarify, Karen, I think when you said that you assumed that it would be in person, you were saying that we, the group, the select board, the manager, et cetera, would be in person, not that we would be having an in-person town meeting.
That's correct. Just the legislative board.
Right.
itself. Yeah. The thing too, if we do a virtual town meeting like that, all the articles would have to be on Australian ballot.
Right.
And that's an option right now. That, the state has, Act 162 that just passed. They're allowing for the articles to be on Australian ballot. The other thing too, Josh, is that we need to have officers elected
Right.
by March 2nd. And if we postpone town meeting to a later date, we might have some new, we may have a new select board member.
Right.
So,
Yeah, no, I think that we will certainly have to do at least a certain proportion of it by Australian ballot. I'm guessing it's really going to make the most sense to do most of it that way. But I think it would be, we could spend a lot of time trying to figure this out now, and then the rules will change
right.
6 times between now and then. So I think we really, as we get closer, ideally what would be nice is by the time we're sending out or printing the town report, if we had a good sense, it would be great if we could have at least sort of the outline in the town report, because we'd reach a lot of people with that report.
Yeah, we will prepare the town report like any other time
right.
in the past.
Yeah. So
we're going to go through the steps, Josh, like it's really going to happen.
Right.
Like it's going to be a normal year where we would go to the school.
Yeah.
But I won't
the
know.
is almost distant, I think. So,
Yeah.
so I think we proceed as it is, and as we get closer to the date of publishing for that, and even if it ends up being that we have to insert a flyer in the town report at the last minute because we've gotten recent updates, but I'm sure the Secretary of State's office is highly focused on this, so
Right.
so we'll be getting more information.
So I think it's January 29th or January 30th when all the articles and, the budget and all that stuff to be approved. So by then we'll know.
The other thing that people should be aware of is that I think I'm right in saying that people who are interested in running for a position do not need to get signatures on a petition. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct right now. The other thing too is I encourage anyone that wants to run for a seat. So there's a select board seat, there'll be a lister's seat, and there's a cemetery commissioner seat that's coming up for re-election. So there's at least 3 seats. Contact John Johnson, the town clerk. He will give you directive on what you need and how to proceed.
Sounds good.
Um,
All right. So yeah, that'll be an ongoing conversation for quite a while. So we'll see how it pans out.
will be, and it'll determine too how many meetings we have and when we have public informational meetings for the budget.
Yeah.
So as we move forward, we'll shift as we need to, Josh. I want to make 2 acknowledgements. I overlooked them in the last meeting. I want to give a shout out to Ruby McAdoo, Amy Nelson, and I know there's a lot more people that coordinated the Halloween drive-through at the school. I had seen it was very successful. They had a lot of families, a lot of children that went through there. There was a lot of work that was done, and it sounded like they had a lot of fun. So I want to thank everyone who was involved in the drive-through Halloween event at the school. You did an awesome job. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
The Veterans Memorial outside here in front of Town Hall. The Putney Gun Club had put a wreath out there on Veterans Day, the morning of Veterans Day. And I also want to thank that group for actually, you know, acknowledging our veterans and putting that wreath out there. I thought that was a very nice thing to do, and thank you.
Thank you for that. Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
You know, little things like that, I think it means a lot for a small community, and I think it's important that we acknowledge people that do, you know, things like this. So I think that's about it for now, for me.
Okay. So that would bring us to other business. Is there anybody who has other business? I don't see anything in the chat. At the risk of putting you on the spot, Jill, I see that Jill Garland, you're present on this call or on this meeting. I don't know whether you're on video or not because I don't have the ability to see everybody for some reason. But Jill had brought to my attention a concern about access to. There's a lot of background noise.
Hold on, let me see. It might have been Jill. I just muted her, so. And again, Jill, if you're not wanting to or willing to speak about this at the moment, that's fine. But there's concern about access for ATVs on what has been historically the school forest property, and that property has now transferred to the nonprofit, and I can't remember whether they have a specific name or not at this stage. Forest for Learning?
It is just Forest for Learning.
Correct.
I think that I have been hearing that concern from others as well, that there are certain sort of avenues through that forest that historically have been used by ATV users for many, many years throughout the duration of the existence of that property. And I had encouraged Jill to sort of gather support for that idea by perhaps gathering signatures, and I believe that some of that has happened. Jill, I don't know whether you want to comment at all, and I spoke with, in speaking with Jill, I made it clear that we no longer have authority as to how things happen on that property. Property has been transferred to the Forest for Learning nonprofit, but that I thought we would be willing to participate in discussions if that was helpful at all. Now you're muted.
Am I muted now? Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay, so I have tried to talk with the board. I did attend one meeting. I tried to attend the second meeting and they denied my entry to the meeting. I have in fact gotten some signatures of people that would that support the use of the forest in that capacity. It's not that we want to use every single trail within the forest. There are a few connector trails that can connect from basically East Putney to Brookline, going through that that area. And there is some support to do this. I guess more than anything, I was a little dismayed that I got denied access to their meeting. It was noted that it was not a public meeting and not a public organization anymore. And that doesn't sit too well in that this used to be public lands. And these trails that we want to use have been there for more than half a century. And the trails absolutely would not be there had it not been for the ATVs and the snowmobiles going through and keeping the brush back and the trees out of the way. You know, the trails just wouldn't have been there. And 50 years ago, people just plain didn't walk out there like they do now. I mean, there's a lot more use out there, foot traffic. But back, you know, a long, long time ago, the only use was by motorized vehicles. And so I guess I don't really have too much more to say on the subject at this point, but that's, you know, I do have some support to, you know, keep these trails open.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
Well, I understand that this land is now a private property in the sense that it belongs to a nonprofit. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Well, in that case, the speaker wanting to have use of the trails should address herself to the landowner, because under Vermont law, ATV riders may have access to properties with to private properties with the owner's permission.
Right. I think that's what they have, what Jill has tried to engage in conversation about. And I think that the question is, I know that it has been, I don't know whether controversial is the right term, but I know there have been some challenges to the discussion on ATVs having access to this property over its lifetime as a school forest. And I guess I just would, I would voice a personal opinion that I hope that the nonprofit would be at least open to discussions of this nature, and perhaps making concessions on both ends so that users who have been using it for a long time continue to have access that they may have had in the past, and that is not going to change dramatically. I don't know, honestly, what our role as the select board is, if any, in either trying to sort of mediate this conversation or be involved in it in any way. I guess I would ask, and I don't know whether, Jill, you want to be, do you want to be a contact person if there are folks who are interested in this topic and would like to find out more? Is that something you're willing to be named as, Jill?
Yes, I guess so. Yes. Yep. Yep. I would in that capacity.
Can I clarify something?
Who was that?
This is Eileen.
Eileen. Yeah, go ahead, Eileen.
Jill was not denied access to the meeting. She was asked to provide an agenda item. And as far as I know, that didn't happen. She was asked to specify what exactly she wanted to talk about at the next meeting. And she's still willing, she's still welcome to do that. She's got Emily Powell's contact information and can be put on the agenda for the next Flourish for Learning meeting.
So that is correct, but I did ask for entrance to that specific meeting without knowing that I needed to submit a request to go to the meeting. And I did not know that because the previous meeting I was allowed in. And I just feel like, you know, the public now is just not welcome to these meetings. They don't post their meeting notes. They don't post agendas or meeting times.
Well, so I would suggest that you talk to Emily Powell about that because it is a private organization now, and they may be able to accommodate that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Fairman, go ahead.
Two clarifications. First, there seems to be an assumption here that private organizations are somehow subject to the Vermont open meeting law. They are not. The Vermont open meeting law applies only to what are called public bodies, which include the select board and a school board, but does not include, for example, the Vermont General Assembly. The other point I'd like to mention is I have walked all the trails in the former Putney Central School Forest many times, and when the school owned it, they prohibited motorized vehicles. They had signs posted to this effect, and they also prohibited firearms. Now, of course, it's now under different ownership, but as private landowners, they basically have jurisdiction as to who comes on their property or doesn't, and what they do there.
Yes, that's correct. I guess what I'm encouraging is that there's a sort of civil discussion about this without changing things. And I don't know whether there were exceptions to that rule previously when it belonged to or was governed by the central school as to whether ATVs were allowed to have usage in some areas. That's my.
They were not. They were not.
No motorized vehicles.
The school didn't have a lot of resources to stop motorized vehicles, but they never had explicit permission to travel on those trails. And I don't know what the Vermont public rules are for public land, but Howard Fairman is correct that motorized vehicles require written permission to travel on private land.
Right.
If it's posted, right? I mean, if it's not posted.
No, it's motorized vehicles are specifically permission only.
Okay.
She's correct.
So I guess, again, I would encourage discussion on this, and I don't know whether there is some common ground that can be reached in order to keep some access available to certain portions of it that have been used historically, or whether that is not a possibility. I just would hope that people could talk about it and see whether there are ways that it can be managed without ruffling feathers. Farah, go ahead.
I just have a quick clarifying question. It sounded like perhaps what Jill was saying was that there was a route that would be helpful to connect other parcels. And I just wonder if there could be just an agreement about one route that they could use, and that might be a good compromise.
Again, I would encourage Jill to reach out to Emily Powles, who's the secretary for Forest for Learning, because they own the land.
Sounds good. Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
In that regard, the Vermont Association of Snow Travelers, VAST, may be able to offer some very useful, some very helpful guidance, because they are extremely good at this. There's a wildlife reserve that I'm familiar with, which belongs to the Army Engineers. I discovered snowmobilers abusing it. So I asked the Army Engineers, they said, we have no jurisdiction, there's nothing we can do. I told VAST about it, they said they're on it, we're on it, and it never happened again. So, these people are good.
Yeah. No, I don't think that's part of the VAST network, I know it's not part of the VAST network, but VAST is definitely a capable organization. And maybe it's also a question of whether there is a boundary line of the school forest with neighboring privately held lands where there could be a maintained trail of some sort or something. But again, I just hope we can figure out a way to work together to keep things available. David, go ahead.
Jill came to me and talked to me about this too, and I know that I've ridden those trails many times in my life, not recently, not for the last 20 years, but I really hope that a compromise can be reached. I think it's really important. I think that's the kind of town we have. I know Jill, and I know that she would be willing to talk to anybody, and I hope that the Forest for Learning is open to that too. It sounds like they are from what Eileen has said. And that's what I have to say.
So Jill, it sounds like Emily Pals is the person to be in touch with, and I don't have her information, but I'm sure that's available somewhere. Mr. Fairman is right in pointing out that these are, since it's not a public body, they are not subject to open meeting law, but getting on it seems like something probably a viable route to go. So.
Okay,
Can I
thank
add
you.
one thing?
Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
So I spoke with Lionel. He is on the forest warrant. He's part of that. And I don't want to speak for him. So I would encourage Jill to send an email to Emily and get on the agenda. And Lionel was pretty specific about certain things. So, and I think it's important, and perhaps Lionel can share it with the board at some point if he feels the need to do that. But again, I don't want to speak for Lionel. So Jill, I would recommend that you do get on their agenda. And who knows, I might just pop in on a meeting too.
Well, you can't just pop in, you have to be invited.
Well,
So, the other thing is I know they are working towards, and I have no idea where they are in this process, but actually getting an easement and having that easement in place. And it would be important if there is language about this that needs to be there before that easement is fully formed. That
right.
would be important. So I would say, again, urgency might not be exactly the right term, but time is probably of the essence. So sooner is probably better than later.
You are correct with the conservation easement. They're working on getting that. And liability is another concern. And wildlife was another concern. So, and, children being out in the forest. But I do understand where Jill's coming from too, and Barra, having an upper trail. But again, it's private land. So
yeah, I
hope they can compromise.
Yeah, I agree. All right.
Thank you for bringing this up tonight. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, thank you. All right. So unless there is any other business, which I don't, let's see, there were 2 trails open to ATVs in the past. Cheryl Struthers is saying there were 2 trails open to ATVs in the past. And I don't know what the history of that and the logistics, but that's something to question. And otherwise, I think, do we need an executive session, Karen?
Absolutely not.
Good. So our next meeting date is December 2nd, and it will be right here in the same virtual room that we're in right now. And Karen, can you just remind us, Karen, how people find the link for that? Is that on the town site?
It is. So the login for the select board meetings is on the town website. If you go there, it's under notices, and you can find it under the select board page, which is under like town manager page. So, and feel free to surf the website because there's a lot of resources on there.
Okay, sounds good. So next meeting date, December 2nd, here, 5:30.
Josh, before we adjourn, I just want to ask a question. As the clerk, I need to sign the warrants that we approved. Is that right? So I just need to go to town hall to do that?
Well,
Correct.
so you need to, as the clerk, there's a handful of things you need to do, but one of them, we all 3 need to sign the warrants. But you, as the clerk, one of your specific duties is that you sign off on the approved minutes.
Okay. Even though I didn't vote on them.
Exactly. Since you were not present, I'm not sure whether that applies for this last batch. It may be because we voted on them and it passed that you still signed on them. I'm guessing that's the case. But
Okay.
yes, ideally within the next handful of days, you go to town hall and sign off on the warrants. The warrants, now that we've voted on them, checks can be issued. So, it's not waiting on us arriving for the signatures, but the sooner we get those signed, the sooner they can sort of be filed as finished. So that's
Thank you.
helpful. Thank you for asking that. And then beyond that, David, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
You definitely hear a motion to adjourn.
And
Second.
Second, good. Thank you. All right. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. And
Thank you, everyone.
Sarah, for being here.
Welcome, Vera.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Well done.
Great to see you all.